स्थापितं स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथामृतं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नम ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा। So welcome to the Bhaktyaloka series. We have been discussing this six faults, and among the six faults, we are on the last fault, that is Lauylam. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha Laulyam cha shadbir bhaktir vinashati. So we had one class on Laulyam, and yesterday we could not have the class. Sorry for that, because I was traveling and I could not get proper rest, and that's why it was late. So we could not have it. Please forgive me for that. Yesterday, I could not inform also the devotees about that the class is cancelled. So I'll just recap what we discussed. There are these three types of laurlia: restlessness, greed, and desire. We have been discussing about restlessness. There is the restlessness of the mind, and there is the restlessness of the intelligence. And within the restlessness of the mind is restlessness due to attachment and restlessness due to aversion, because the mind has these two sides or two dualities. You know, you like something, you hate something. So these dvanda are there. So there is restlessness due to attachment. When something you are attached and that object comes in from front of you, become restless. And somebody whom you hate, when that person comes in front of you, you become restless. So there are these two types of restlessness. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes this verse: Indriyanam hi charantam yan mano anu vidiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayur navam ivambasi. There is one thing that the senses, pull the mind. And this has been dealt in the Bhagavad Gita. Yatato hi api kaunteya purushasya vipashyati indriyani pramatini haranti prasabham mana. Yatato hi api kaunte. Yatan means one who is endeavoring. He, that person, certainly is endeavoring. Api, even though he is endeavoring in spite. Kaunteya, son of Kunti, Purushascha, Vipashyata. This person, man, is not a man who is, you know, not in knowledge. Has full discrimination. Indriyani pramatini, the senses are very, very strong. Pramatini, they get agitated. Haranti prasabam mana. And they drag the mind. The senses drag the mind to enjoy the sense objects. But here, this verse is speaking about how the mind drags the pragya. Pragya has intelligence. When the senses fix on one of the sense objects, anuvidhiyate, when the mind follows the senses, then the mind pulls the intelligence, just like Vayurnava Imambasi. And there is these two types, Raga, Dvesha, Vavasito. Restlessness due to the attachment and aversion. If we don't, if we come under that control, tayorhi vashamagache, tohi asya parib, then there are great stumbling blocks in the path of self-realization. So having established that how to regulate this lovely in the form of restlessness of the mind, take shelter of Bhakti Devi. All the sensual activities you dovetail in relation to Lord arouse a devotional mood in all these senses. And that's how you transform that into attachment to the Lord. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a solution. But then he poses a question. But how can you, conquer the restlessness of the mind when the intelligence is restless? So that's where he comes. Hmm. So then he speaks about the restlessness of the intelligence. And there is, what is the definition of intelligence? The intelligence is that which discriminates between the mind's good and bad propensities. And there is two types, resolute, multi-branched. And he quotes Vyavasayatmika Buddhi and Bhogashwarya Prasaktana. And then one who is resolute, what are the symptoms? Prajahati, Yadakaman, and Dukeshu Anuvigna Mana. So this is how he quotes the symptoms of one who is resolute. And then there are these two types of intelligence, mundane and spiritual. Mundane intelligence is the propensity to discriminate between the good and bad under the dictation of the mind. Is called mundane intelligence. And spiritual intelligence, what? The intelligence to discriminate between the good and bad under the dictation of the soul. This is under the dictation of the mind, and this is under the dictation of the soul. It's called spiritual intelligence. So yesterday I discussed in detail this graphical chart, which mentions how the material intelligence is under the dictation of the mind and thereby the senses and sense objects, whereas the spiritual intelligence is under the dictation of the soul directly, under the dictation of the soul. And we in Krishna consciousness start taking dictations from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra and gradually start spiritualizing the intelligence. And there is a tug of war going on because the senses and the mind are very strong and they pull the material intelligence drag onto material existence. And at one hand, we have the weak spiritual intelligence in the form of instruction from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And the soul is being pulled in these two directions. And that's why the more we hear Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, we spiritualize the intelligence. And intelligence has these two functions, discrimination and determination. So when that determination comes, that comes when the intelligence is spiritualized. The more the intelligence is spiritualized, the deeper is the determination. And we discussed these verses also. If you remember, Vishwanath Chakra Thakur, he says, Evam buddhe param buddhva samsabhya atmanam atmana. Established in the self by the self. What does this mean? That the soul is Mahan, and you can't go, I'm not going to enjoy the senses, because the soul is superior to even the intelligence. So, but that can be only done by itself, not by something inferior. So that's how, when the soul is firm, then it controls the senses, mind, intelligence, and lust. Prabhupada says, uh, study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. So here Prabhupada is using the term spiritual intelligence. So that is direction of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. But following the dictations of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra when acts and ultimately becomes self-realized, then he follows the dictation of the soul. Then his intelligence is completely spiritualized because it is under the dictation of the soul. Okay, so this is where we completed our discussion yesterday, and we will now continue further our discussion. That is why in the Bhagavad Gita 3.42 it is said, Indriyani paranyahur, indriyabhya paramana, manasastu parabuddhir, yo buddhe parasastu saha. It is said that the senses are supreme. Indriyani paran ahu. Ahu means it is said. But superior to the senses is the mind. Indriyabhya param mana. Indriyabhya. This is Bahuvachan. Param means superior. Mana, the mind. Superior to the mind is the intelligence. Manasastu para buddhi. What is superior to the intelligence is Atma. Yo buddhe parastu saha. Saha is that Atma. He is the real person actually. So we are continuing our discussion just to get you on track. We were here where it was mentioned that what is material intelligence and what is spiritual intelligence. And then we went into this concept of material intelligence and spiritual intelligence and how the self is controlled by the self. We went into Vishwanath Chakra Thakur's commentary, then Prabhupada. And now we are back to the discussion in Bhaktyaloka. After speaking about this spiritual intelligence, that is why it is said in the Bhagavad Gita. So that is why Bhagavad Gita, Yo Buddhe Parasastu Saha. This is spiritual intelligence. The intelligence also purposely accepts materialism only when under the control of the false ego. So the intelligence is perverted. Actually, this is the hierarchy. The soul should take dictation. The intelligence should take dictation from the soul. I'll go back to the intelligence should take the dictation from the soul, and thereby with the intelligence, should dictate the mind. The mind should dictate the senses. And that's how one controls the sense objects. But now we are under the dictation of the senses. The senses are very strong. Remember the chariot analogy. The horses are very strong. And they, although the mind is superior to the senses, the mind is subservient to the senses. And the mind, instead of taking direction from the intelligence, it overpowers the intelligence and makes it subservient. And that's how the Atma is pulled on into sense gratification. But the actual natural hierarchy is that the intelligence should take dictations from the soul, and thereby that intelligence should control the mind and thereby control the senses. So this is the natural hierarchy. For that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quoting this verse. The intelligence also purposely accepts materialism only when under the control of the false ego. So when it is under the control of the false ego, where is the false ego here in this diagram? Anyone? In this diagram, where is the false ego? I have not showed it, but where does it fall? Anyone? Kindly raise your hands. Where does the false ego come into picture here? Reena Mataji. Are you there, Reena Mataji? Jagdishwar Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji, this false ego covering the soul.
Yeah, but
uh,
where exactly it is coming in the hierarchy here? Whether it is between the senses and sense objects, or senses and mind, or mind or intelligence, or
between
intelligence,
soul and intelligence.
between the soul and the intelligence.
Intelligence.
Yeah, that's right. So that's what he is mentioning. The intelligence also perversely accepts materialism only when under the control of the false ego. So the false ego covers the intelligence and then it accepts materialism. When under the control of the pure ego in the form of identifying oneself as a servant of Krishna, the intelligence also is always naturally pure. So when the avidya covering is removed, then the soul own glory is revealed, that it is a pure spirit soul. And there is identification as Jivera Sarup Krishna Nityadas. Then the intelligence is pure. Therefore, the Vedas establish that the knower of the body is intelligent. You know, so the knower of the body is intelligent. Which verse from the Bhagavad Gita you can quote for this? That the knower of the body is intelligent. Anyone can quote a verse from the Bhagavad Gita to substantiate this point? Therefore, the Vedas establish that the knower of the body is intelligent. Which quote verse of the Bhagavad Gita you can quote to substantiate this point? Anyone? Priya Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Yes.
It's from the 13th chapter actually.
Yes. You're referring to your Bhagavad Gita now?
Actually, I know some verses.
Pardon?
I know some shlokas, but I've not
Okay.
memorized them so nicely, so I'm
Mataji,
not able to
frankly
take them.
speaking, Mataji is very, very thorough with the Bhagavad Gita. Whenever I ask any question, she quotes the verse from the Bhagavad Gita. That is how the student. Idam shariram kaunteha kshetram it abhidhiyate. Idam shariram. Etad yo व्यक्ति tam prahu kshetragya iti tad vida. This body is kshetram. Idam sharira kaunteha. It is kshetra. Etad yo व्यक्ति tam prahu. One who knows. Dear Vyakti, Tam Prahu, Kshetragya, the knower of the field, is, it's very, enigmatic. This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field. And one who knows this body is called the knower. That means one who knows that I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul. That's the point here. So 13.2 and 3. So the knower of the body means that he doesn't know that he is the body, but he knows that I am different from the body. I am spiritual. The spirit soul is higher than the intelligence because intelligence is only the soul's propensity. So it has to follow the soul's propensity, but now it's following the propensity of the dictations of the mind and the senses. When a living entity realizes himself as pure spiritual particle, please remember he has to realize it, then his spiritual ego in the form of identifying himself as a servant of Krishna naturally arises. It arises naturally. Ai Nanda Tanuja Kinkara Patitam Vam Vishame Bhavamudo Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Situduli Sadrisham Vichinte. So at the stage of bhava, one's spiritual form, there is a revelation. Even at the stage of nishtha, one realizes that he is different from the body. But the soul's swarupa is also revealed there. So one understands realizes that he's different from the body, and it continues there. So he realizes he is in the servant in Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya or Madhurya Ras. At that time, the intelligence in its pure form rejects materialism and accepts spiritualism. At that time, the living entity has no desire other than the service of Krishna, and he rejects material desires as insignificant. In this position, the living entity is known as Sthita Pragya, transcendently situated, or Sthitadhi, steady-minded. So this can, anytime from the stage of Nishtha to Bhava, there is a gradual progression, but from Nishtha it begins, you can say. So even at the stage of Nishtha, there are Nashtaprayasha, Bhadresha has happened practically. Your bhakti is now pure. But at the stage of Bhava, it is, it becomes completely pure. That is what it means. Being empowered by the spiritual potency. This is the Ladini Shakti and the Samvit Shakti at the stage of Bhava. The intelligence then becomes steady and controls the mind and heart by regulating them. Then the mind, under the direction of the intelligence, controls the senses and by regulating them, and a favorable mood for devotional service manifest in the sense objects, indriyasya arthe. So I mentioned in the chart how, when, when the soul is awakened in its swarupa, then this is a natural propensity. The intelligence follows the natural propensity of the soul. It is attracted to the supreme soul. Then the intelligence controls the mind and thereby the senses. And that's how sense regulation happens. Sense regulation happens. So that is what is being mentioned here. This is called Indriya Nigra, controlling senses and devotional service. Whatever arrangements are there for controlling the senses in the paths of dry knowledge and renunciation does not properly control the senses. And then he quotes this. So in the Jnana Ashtanga Yoga Patha, because the soul is not engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, it is artificial control. No? It is artificial control. And that's why he quotes this verse. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. One who refrains from eating niraharasya dehina also stops the sense objects from functioning. Vishaya vinivartante. But the desire for sense objects remains. Rasavarjam. Having seen the Atma, Paramdrishta, one can stop the desire as well. Asya rasopi nivartate. So the point here is that just by refraining the senses, by not giving ahar to the senses, one can stop the functioning of the senses and sense objects. A sick man, his senses are weak, durbala. So he cannot enjoy the sense objects. So can he be called as a self-realized soul? No, because the desire for sense objects remains. He is not, rasa varjam has not happened. But when one becomes self-realized, then the desires also, are gone, nivartate. This is real sense control. One should spiritualize the senses and control them with the mind, and one should spiritualize the mind and control it with the intelligence. In this process, Lauylam in the form of restlessness of the intelligence and the mind is vanquished. When the intelligence is restless, the mind cannot be fixed. The restless intelligence wanders sometimes in karma, sometimes in yoga, sometimes in dry renunciation, and sometimes in dry knowledge. Shuksha Gyan, Shuksha Vairagya. To fix the intelligence in bhakti by giving up the restlessness, Srimad Bhagavatam prescribes. Yat karma bir yat tapasa jnana vairagayatascha yat yogena dana dharmena shreyo bhir itarer api. Sarvam mad bhakti yogena mad bhakto labate anjasa swargapavargam madhama kadachit yadi vanchati. Everything that can be achieved by fruitive activities, penance, yat karmabir, yat tapasa, knowledge and detachment, jnana vairagayasya, mystic yoga, charity, religious duties, yogena dana dharmena, and all other means of perfecting life. Shreyobir itarapi is easily achieved. Sarvam anjasa labhate by my devotee, by my devotee. Through loving service unto me, mad bhakti yogena. So, this is highest use of intelligence, not to follow these paths of karma, jnana, yoga, vairagya. Because if the intelligence is fixed in bhakti, then you have given the restlessness of the intelligence. Because the restless intelligence wanders in karma, yoga, jnana and all. And one should fix his intelligence in bhakti. If some other my devotee desires kadachit yadi vanchati, promotion to heaven, liberation or residence in my abode, swarga apavargam madhama, he easily achieves such benedictions. Anjasa labate. Now, this is the Lord speaking in the Uddhav Gita. This is 11 Canto 20, 32 to 34. And a pure devotee is anya abhilashata shunyam. He has no even desire for these four types of liberation which are favorable. He is free from mukti spurha. Then why is the Lord saying kadachit yadi vanchati? Swarga, liberation or madhama. Whereas the definition of pure devotional service is, sayuj shaloka shashti samipyam dhiyamanam na grananti vinam mad bhakta sevanam jana. Even if these four types of liberation which are offered to my devotee doesn't accept it. But here, even if he desires, Anjasa, I'll give it. So this looks very contradictory. So a devotee sometimes would like to go to heaven so that he can preach. Like take compassion on the Jnanis and the yogis who are liberated and they are in the Brahma Jyoti. And to preach them is very difficult. Somebody in the material world is very, very rich and opulent and enjoying sense gratification. For him to become a devotee is not easy. Then what to speak of spiritual happiness, Brahmananda. So that devotee desires that. So Krishna, sends him there. And sometimes in Vaikuntha also. To preach those who are fixed in, the Aishwarya Bhav, of Vaikuntha, they are fixed in it. That is their Sarupa now. So for them to take up to Vraj Bhakti is not easy. So kadachit yadi vanchati. So this is how we have to understand this term kadachit yadi vanchati. Na kinchit sadhavo dhira bhakta hi ekantino mama vanchat api maya dhattam kaivallam apunarbhavam. Because my devotees possess saintly behavior, sadhu, and deep intelligence, dhira, they completely dedicate themselves to me and do not desire anything besides me. Ekantino mama. This is the next verse. They don't desire anything except the Lord. But kadachit, if they desire, that is also for the Lord's service only. Indeed, even if I offer them maya dattamapi, liberation from birth and death, kaivalyam apunarbhavam, they do not accept it. Na kinchit vanchati. So this is the definition of a pure devotee. Considering all this, the practicing devotee should give up Lauylam in the form of restlessness and attain fixed intelligence and devotional service. So this is how Bhaktivinoda Thakur deals with Lauylam in the form of restlessness. This is a very, very deep topic and one has to meditate upon it and understand this. Now I'll come to, after discussing Lauylam in the form of restlessness, I will discuss Lauylam in the form of greed. But before that, are there any questions? Any questions, any clarifications up till now, what we have discussed? Okay, so let's go to restlessness in the form of greed. Okay, this is the second meaning of Laulya. Another meaning of word Laulya is greed. If greed is directed to other objects, then how it can be applied in relation with Krishna? Greed should be carefully engaged in the service of Krishna. Greed for material enjoyment should be conquered by the above mentioned method. Like you are greedy for sense object, you should be greedy to procure that sense object for Krishna's pleasure. That is why it is said that persons who are overcome by lust and greed cannot become as pure through the process of yoga, beginning with yama, as they can become by serving Krishna. It is said that people who are overcome by lust and greed cannot be pure through the process of yoga, as by serving Krishna. And he quotes this famous verse spoken by Narad to Vyasadev. Yamadibir yogapade kamaloba hata muhu mukunda sevaya yadvat hatatmadya nashamyati. The Atma, constantly afflicted by lust and greed, kama lobha hata muhu, will not be satisfied, na shamyati, by Ashtanga Yoga and other paths. Yamadibir yogapate, as much as direct service to Mukunda. Yadvat Mukunda Sevaya Adhya. Now, we were discussing how the path of Jnana and Ashtanga will make oneself realized. But even they are constantly afflicted by lust and greed, the Jnanis and the Yogis. And they are not internally satisfied. What is the reason? What is the reason of the Jnanis and Yogis not being, satisfied? The Atma is not satisfied. What is the reason? Anyone knows? Priya Mataji, yes?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Uh, Atma is only satisfied while satisfying the Supreme, that is Yanatma Suprasiddhati. So the direction or the purpose is not clear maybe.
Can you speak a little loudly, please?
Hare Krishna, am I audible?
Now, yeah.
Yes. Atma is only satisfied while serving Paramatma, that is Super Soul or Krishna, Bhagavan. So
Yeah. The
that is
Jnanis and the Yogis have desires, selfish desires. The Jnanis want to get liberated. The Yogis also want siddhis and liberation. And that's why the Atma is not satisfied. And the Atma can be satisfied because the natural propensity of the Atma is to serve the Supreme Atma. Mukunda Sevayatma. So that is why Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, that is why it is said that persons who are overcome by lust and greed cannot become as pure through the process of yoga as they can by serving Krishna. So these processes make one pure, but they cannot make them as pure by which the Atma is. Yenatma suprasiddhati will not happen for them. Because they have desires. The Jnanis have desire for liberation, mokshakami, and the yogis have desire for siddhis, siddhikami. Bhukti kami, mukti kami, siddhi kami, sakale ashant. Krishna bhakta nishkam ataeva shant. Because shant means here, he has no other desire except the desire to please the Lord. That is the natural constitutional position. Because shamo man nishtata buddher, absorbing the intelligence in me constitutes mental equilibrium. So another quote, Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives. By developing greed for Krishna's service, the Vaishnava service, and chanting the holy names, there will be no greed for inferior things. So we should be very greedy to serve Krishna, to serve Vaishnavas, to chant holy name. This type of laulya is good to be cultivated. When one becomes greedy for seeing the Vrajvasi service to Krishna is very, one who becomes greedy by seeing the Vrajvasi service to Krishna is very fortunate. By the mercy of that greed, he attains the qualification for Rag Bhakti. So this is a true Vrajbasi who is steeply, practicing Ragatmika Bhakti. And seeing that, you also develop a Rag in your heart. And this is the development of Raga Bhakti. Krishna Bhaktir Bhavitamati Kriyatam Kuto Labhyate Tatra Laulyam Ekamulanam Janma Koti Sukritir Na Labhyate. Krishna Bhakti Bhavamati, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavamati Kriyatam Kuto Labhyate. Where you get that mati of pure Krishna consciousness who is on the bhava and the prema stage? Seeing him, then you will develop that greed. Then you get the qualification for Rag Bhakti. Once material greed is vanquished, in proportion to the development of the greed for Ragatmika service. So here I have given a figurative analysis of spiritual greed. There is lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, and envy. So this is how dhyayato vishan pumsan sangash, sangas upajayate, sangat sanjayate kama. Kamat krodha bijayate. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, illusion. So all these, take us deeper in material existence. So as one conquers lust, how as one kama is pacified by practicing bhakti, and then krodha is also pacified by practicing bhakti, which we spoke in the Updeshamrit, how these six vegas should be controlled by applying them in bhakti. Then as this, kama and krodha pacified, the material greed will start transforming into spiritual greed. And you go out of illusion and come to reality. And you possess material pride, then you possess natural humility. I am the servant of Krishna. And that envy turns into love. So the degree, the point Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making, once material greed is vanquished in proportion to the development of greed for Ragatmika Bhakti. So that is, figuratively described here. If one has greed for nice foodstuffs, drinks, sleeping, smoking, and drinking wine, then one's devotion diminishes. Of course, devotees might not have a greed for smoking, drinking, wine, but if you have greed for nice foodstuffs, nice soft mango juice, not Karela juice, then that is also a problem. Greed for wine, wealth, and woman are most contrary to devotional principles. Those who have a desire for attaining pure devotional service should carefully give up such things. Whether for auspicious things or sinful things, greed for anything not related to Krishna is most despicable. So we should not have greed for auspicious things also. Forget about sinful things. Any greed which is not in relation to Krishna is most despicable. Greed only in relation to Krishna is the cause of all auspiciousness. The greed attained by the Mahajans for the topics of Krishna is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. Vayam tu na vitripyama uttama shloka vikrame yat shrunvatam rasagyanam swadu swadu pade pade. We never tire, Vayam tu na vitripyama, of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Uttama shloka vikrame. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him, rasagyanam, relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. Yat shrunvatam swadu swadu pade pade. So we have to develop this kind of spiritual greed. Let me repeatedly hear the Bhagavatam. And as you repeatedly hear, then gradually the taste will come. And once you get that taste, then and the more you want to hear, the spiritual greed increases. So this is the greed the Mahajans had attained. Okay, this is the question from the Bhagavatam. We are not satisfied with the exploits of the Lord whose fame is the highest. Because at every moment, pade pade, those exploits become more relishable, sadhu sadhu, for the hearers who have knowledge of rasa. Yat runvatam rasa jnanam. So this is Vishwanath Chakra Thakur's translation. Vishwanath Chakra Thakur says, let us continue to hear the activities of the Lord. Or the sentence can mean, let others be satisfied, but we are not. That is indicated by the word tu. The meaning is this: the three ways one knows that one has had enough of something and is satisfied. There are three ways you can know: by sufficiency of quantity, as with food in the belly. You like some item and you have rasa for it, and you keep on eating that item. But once the belly is full, you will tell, I am sufficient, I am satisfied. So in three ways you can know one has had enough of something and is satisfied. Then, by lack of awareness of taste. Suppose you go to some place and they offer you a very good item, which is actually very good from that culture or from that tradition, but you don't have rasa gyan of that item. Like Bengal, the best item, Prabhupada says, is bangan fried in mustard oil. Prabhupada liked it. He's a Bengali. But the foreigners, Westerners, they cannot smell that mustard oil. So there is lack of awareness. And you say, no, no, satisfied, I don't want more. Then the lack of relishing the object. You cannot relish that object, so you say, I'm satisfied. So these are the three ways. In this verse, there is insufficiency of the hearers, shunvatam, because the exploits are not directly present, being present only in sound, in the ether contacting the ear. So the ear, the mouth has some limitation, but the ears are two. That's why you can keep on filling the ears, And because, the pastimes have happened, it is not the Prakat Leela, it is the Aprakat Leela. And the more you hear the Aprakat Leela, the more you want to, the sound vibration you're hearing, and the more you want to relish it. Satisfaction is negated for a person who is not capable of appreciating the taste or rasa, for a person who is just like an animal. So, the sages of Naimisharanya are saying, we have rasa jnanam. Like somebody is given that bangan which is, dipped in mustard oil. He doesn't have rasa jnanam, so he doesn't want to have it. But somebody who knows the science, who knows the taste, he keeps on having it. That's the point here. How the sages have appreciation for rasa jnanam, but still they are not satisfied. Vayam tu na vitrapyaman. Unlike chewed sugarcane, which loses its taste and becomes distastable, the topics of the Lord are most excellent because of the increase in taste at every moment. Materially, sugarcane, once you chew, the juice is taken out, then you keep on chewing, there is no juice. But the topics of the Lord are ever fresh because they are spiritual. And the juice keeps on increasing, it doesn't reduce. The sages have not lost taste, but are still dissatisfied. This is how spirituality works. They have taste and they're relishing it more. The quantity is increasing of their relish. They should become satisfied, no? But they are not satisfied. That is how, Pratipadam Purnamrita Aswadanam. How do you know somebody has taste for chanting? After 10 rounds, for us the taste comes down and, Nidra takes over and we want to finish the rounds. But one who is on the Ruchi stage, the 10th round now when he's chanting, his taste has increased. So he wants to chant another 10 more rounds. So that is how spiritual taste is. So this is how greed in the form of material laulya has to be conquered by spiritual greed. So that has been described. So any questions you have on this? Laulya, the second meaning of Laulya. Okay, let's take now the last one. The last one is very, very simple, but very, very important for us. Laulya, he says, as desire. Another meaning of Laulya is desire. Desires of two types. Desire for material enjoyment, desire for liberation. Bhukti spruha and mukti spruha. Unless one gives up these two types of desires, one cannot practice devotional service. Please mark this point. One cannot practice devotional service. If you have desires for material enjoyment or liberation, one cannot practice devotional service. So here these two types, enjoyment and liberation. Srila Rupa Goswami has written in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhukti Mukti Spruha Yavat Pishachi Ridi Vartate Tavat Bhakti Sukhasyatra Katam Abhyudho Bhave. How can the happiness of bhakti, Katam Tavat Bhakti Sukhasya, arise in the heart, Ridhi Abhyudo Bhave, when the witch of desire for enjoyment and liberation. Bhukti Mukti Spruha Pishachi. So even the slightest desire for enjoyment in the form of enjoyment in this world or Swarga, or liberation in the form of Sayujya, or even the four favorable types of liberation, Saropya, Samipya, Salokya, Shashti, these are like Pishachis, Yavat. Atra Vartate remains there. So we are experiencing some happiness in bhakti, but the real happiness of bhakti is in Shuddha Bhakti. Only when one takes up to Shuddha Bhakti, the happiness is not even compared to Brahmananda. If somebody compares to Brahmananda, he is committing an offense. Because Rupa Goswami also in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says that the Jnanis who are liberated and they are steeped in Brahmanand for half the life of Brahma, that Brahmanand happiness cannot be compared to even a drop of happiness of bhakti. If you compare that, then it is, you're doing something wrong. So that is the happiness of Shuddha Bhakti. Sandrananda Vishesh Atma, Shri Krishna Akarshani. So these are the two qualities of Shuddha Bhakti in Prem. So that means if we are not experiencing that kind of happiness, that means our bhakti is not anya bilashita shunyam. There is bhoga, ichha and kam ichha, bhukti and mukti. Vasanas are there still in the heart. Although we don't desire, but the vasanas are there. That is the point. There are two types of material enjoyment, worldly and heavenly. Women, wealth, children, opulence, kingdom, victory, good food, good sleep, associating with women for sense enjoyment, good birth, and other pleasures are all worldly enjoyments. So very clearly Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying what are worldly enjoyments. Going to heaven and drinking nectar there, as well as sense gratification free from old age, are all heavenly enjoyments. So nobody thinks of going to heaven in this, at least on earth planet. I don't think so there is anyone who knows about Swarga also. Even those who are practicing Varnashram nowadays. So for them, heaven is going to, America. When the heart is filled with the desire to enjoy, one cannot selflessly worship Krishna. Therefore, unless the desire for enjoyment is completely uprooted from the heart, one's progress in devotional service will be obstructed. It has to be completely uprooted from the heart. No mukti spruha, no bhukti spruha in the heart. This is the qualification or the adhikar to practice Shuddha Bhakti. Please remember this. So I put here in the chart, enjoyment, liberation, worldly, heavenly. And what are the worldly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, and what are the heavenly? In this regard, one thing to be said, if all these material enjoyments are favorable to devotional service, then householders can accept them without sin. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very practical. If we give this kind of a standard, then nobody is qualified to practice bhakti. But if all these material enjoyments are favorable to devotional service, then the householders can accept them without sin. In that case, all these enjoyments are not called enjoyments, but rather they are the means of progress in a devotee's life. They are the means until a devotee comes to the practice of pure devotion. They are the means. Otherwise, he is neither here nor there. So this has to be used as a means. And that's why he quotes this verse from the Bhagavatam 1 to 9 and 10 to prove this. Dharma se artasya dharma ekantasya kama labha hi smrita. Material results are not suitable as goal. Na artaya upakalpate, for a person dedicated to higher spiritual goals. Apavargasya hi dharmasya. Attainment of material assets, kamo labhaya, is not the desire, na artasya hi smrita, of a person who is dedicated to higher path. Dharma ekantasya. So one who is practicing the dharma of Shuddha Bhakti, his goal is prema. But although he is practicing dharma in the form of hearing and chanting, artha and kama will come. But one should not get caught in artha and kama or moksha also. He should be fixed in his goal of prema, dharma ekantase. He should be vyavasayatmika bhakti. Kamasya nendra priti labho jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jigyasa narto yascheha karma bhi. For one who desires apavarga, kamasya, sense pleasure attained from enjoying sense objects, indra priti, is not the goal, na labha, as long as one lives, jiveta yavata. The goal is to inquire into the highest truth, jivasya tattva jigyasa. What is accomplished by prescribed duties is not the goal. Na yah cha yat cha iha karma bhi na artha. So prescribed duties, dharma is done for artha. But one who is dharma ekantasya of prema, dharma he performs, artha will come. But kamasya na indriya priti. He should not enjoy the arthas because that is not the goal. But whatever sense enjoyment comes, he considers this as the Lord's mercy and he is fixed in his goal. And he lives his life in a favorable mood to attain pure devotion. And that's why he uses all the artha in tattva jigyasa. Like somebody is a businessman and he takes up to devotional service. So now, he's performing bhakti, he's performing dharma. So maybe his business expands. So he gets a lot of money, artha. Artha, one of the meanings is also money. Artha also means enjoyment. Okay. Artha also means what is the meaning? Ye shabd ka arth kya hai, we say, na? So when he gets this lot of wealth, then he should not enjoy this wealth. Kamasya na indra priti. So he should use this wealth in book distribution or, arranging a Bhagavad Katha, to do jivasya tattva jigyasa. That's the point. And then he is dharma ekantasya. So to prove that, favorable in devotional service without sin, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur has quoted this two verses. Another name of dharma or occupational service is yukta vairagya. So this kind of practice of a bhakta, when artha comes, he doesn't use it for sense enjoyment, but he uses it in the service of Krishna. This is what is called as yukta vairagya. Desire for liberation must be rejected. So after speaking about bhukti spurha, now he is speaking about mukti spurha. There are 5 types of liberation: salokya, shashti, samipya, sarupya, and sayujya. Sayuj, liberation in the form of merging with the Lord, is hated by the practitioner of devotional service. Although salokya, shashti, samipya, and sarup are devoid of the desire of enjoyment, still they are undesirable. I mentioned that this is the definition of pure devotional service. Diyamanam na grinanti vina bat sevanam jana. As soon as a living entity becomes free from material bondage by the strength of devotion, he immediately attains liberation. So liberation is a byproduct. If one is practicing his devotion, which is tinged with liberation, then his bhakti is mixed. So here, liberation is these 5 types. And there are 4 which are not contrary, but still a devotee rejects. This is called as mukti spruha. That liberation, however, is not the principal fruit of bhakti. Liberation is not fruit of bhakti. The pure love of Krishna attained by liberated souls is the principal fruit of sadhana bhakti. So only when you attain liberation by bhakti, it's a byproduct. Moksha lagutakrita, that bhava bhakti, moksha you consider it as tuchya because you have attained pure love. So that is the fruit of sadhana. Sadhana bhakti, you attain bhava bhakti. In this regard, to prove this statement, he quotes the statement of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is appropriate. Salokadi chare yadi hoy seva dware tabu kadachit bhakta kare angikar. If there is a chance to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a pure devotee sometimes accepts Saloke Samipya Shashti, Sarupya forms of liberation, but never Sayujya. Sayujya sunite bhaktera hoy grana bhaya, narakavanchiye tabu sayujnale. A pure devotee does not even hear about Sayuj Mukti, which inspires with fear and hatred. Indeed, the pure devotee would rather go to hell than merge in the effulgence of the Lord. Brahme Ishwara Sayuja Doita Prakara, Brahma Sayuja Haite Ishwara Sayuja Dikakar. Sama Bhattacharya said there are 2 types of Sayuj Mukti, merging in the Brahman effulgence, Brahma Sayuj. The Jnanis attain Brahma Sayuj, they merge in the impersonal Brahman and merging into the personal body of the Lord. So the yogis, they attain Ishwara Sayuj. They go back in the body of Mahavishnu and they don't come out. They are inside their body. Just like, the mother gives birth to a child, he comes out of the womb and the child experiences misery in this material world. There's so much of misery, janma, jara, vyadi, mrityu. So he wants to become free from misery, so he takes up the path of yoga. It's like telling the mother, Mother, I'm experiencing a lot of misery in this material world. Please take back me in the womb. I want to stay in the womb. So that is considered, dikkakar. It's even more abominable than merging into the effulgence. So those who merge in the body of Mahavishnu are these Ishwar Sayuj, the yogis. The purport is that liberation of a devotee in the form of freedom from bondage is easily attained by the will of Krishna. That is why one should not pollute his endeavor for devotional service with desires. It is the essential duty of a practicing devotee to carefully give up materialistic laulya. All these 3, restlessness, then greed and desires. So that's how Bhaktivinoda Thakur ends his article. Okay, any questions you have on this, what we have discussed? Lauylam. Okay, fine then. So we have finished now okay, there is one question. Reena Mataji, what is your initiated name now?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji Dandavat Pranam. Rasa Vihari Radha Devi Dasi.
Okay, then you should write your initiated name.
Okay.
Rasa Vihari.
Rasa Viharini.
Okay. Yes, Rasa Vihari Mataji.
Rasa Viharini Radha Devi Dasi.
Oh,
Yes.
Rasa Vihari Radha Devi Dasi. Okay.
Viharini Radha Devi Dasi. Prabhuji, my question is actually we don't aspire for the 5 all 5 muktis, but we aspire for go to Bhagavad Dham. So there is also we have to we want the Krishna prem, but in the back of the mind there is also we have to go to Bhagavad Dham and to serve the Lord. It's like that. That is okay. And also, why the five muktis that in our acharyas don't aspire for, but what the reason is why, because it's a Vaikuंठ, मतलब जैसे सारूप्य सामीप्य मतलब भगवान के साथ ही हमको रहना है, तो that is वैकुंठ वासी कृष्ण विष्णु के साथ रहना, इसलिए it's so just can you clear it? अरे ओ Prabhuji, go on. Prabhuji, go on.
Yes, Ras Viharini Radha Mataji.
Prabhuji, you're not listen.
Pardon?
You're not listen, Prabhuji. I ask my question.
No, your question, we could not hear only anything. Can you
Oh.
repeat your question?
My question is, just we don't aspire for the five muktis, but in the back of the mind there is that we have to go to Bhagavad Dham and to serve the Lord there. Is that is their wish?
Can you speak a little slowly and little clearly?
Okay. Prabhuji, my question is actually we don't aspire for the five muktis, but in the back of the mind there is that
No, please, you have to speak a little loudly and clearly. We aspire for 5 types of liberation. What
we
are you saying?
don't aspire for the five types of liberation, but we don't aspire for that. But there, with back of the mind, there is that we have to go to Bhagavad Dham and to serve the Lord. That is the wish. And just also one question: why that five muktis we don't that Acharya says don't aspire because of there is in we have to matlab
No,
Vishnu
no,
Vaikuntha
no,
Vaikuntha.
1 minute, 1 minute. You see, what you're speaking now, I'm not able to clearly hear only. Why don't you do one thing? You just record your question very clearly and send it to me. I will answer it and post it in the group.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Then
I'm just able to hear the question very clearly. Okay, anything else? Tomorrow also, yesterday also there were some questions. So today I will answer all the questions. Okay. So thank you very, very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Bhaktyaloka ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Hare Krishna.